characters, and most importantly, well-stocked bars. Welcome to turning nightmares into reality with the brilliant minds behind Queen Mary's Dark Harbor.
Hello, children! Welcome! Greetings to my freaky family! What a year and a half of complete madness and mayhem! Yes! Speaking of insanity, I am thrilled to be here with you this evening. I am vaxxed and masked, I have my flask, and I'm ready to entertain. This is Midsummer Scream! What did you say? What is that? This is Midsummer Scream? What? Awaken the spirits? Oh, is that a new bar? You don't need the ringmaster! Well then, I'll be at the bar. Hello, children! It's the real me. Equally terrifying, I know. Well, welcome. My name is Peggy McGee, and for 6 years I had the immense pleasure of portraying the ringmaster at Queen Mary's Dark Harbor. Do I have any Dark Harbor freaky family cast members here today? Well, welcome again, and thank you for being here in person, and thank you for attending our panel. Today we are going to draw back the curtain, or in this case we're going to take a deep dive into the bowels of the majestic Queen and gain a little insight on how the creative minds were able to turn historic legends into reality and create such memorable monsters and bring them to life. So, I think we'll start.
This is your captain speaking.
Captain, what are you doing here?
Andrew, you look terrible.
It's Peggy.
I mean, Peggy, you look marvelous. Sorry, I didn't recognize you without the apple box.
Well, you should talk here in cartoon form.
Well, we didn't have the budget to fly Renee out to do my makeup, so this is all you get. I'm in 2D and 1 shade of green.
Captain, what are you doing here?
Well, I heard you say historic legends and memorable monsters, so I assumed you were introducing me.
No, not everything's about you.
It's not? I hear what you're saying, but I'm having trouble grasping exactly what it means.
Okay, then I'll be a little more straightforward, Captain. I'm sorry, but we don't need your help.
I see. Well, couldn't I just stay and watch? You won't even know I'm here. I'll just drape across the top of Wally's head like a Captain Comb-Over.
I'm telling Wally you said that.
He already knows he's bold.
Captain.
All right, I'm going. I'll just go and join the ringmaster at the bar.
Oh, well, you might need a token.
You know what? I'll just go and drink in my trailer.
Ladies and gentlemen, our beloved Captain. Always trying to upstage me. Well, let's take a little trip down memory lane. Here's a little reminder of what we were up to when you last saw us.
Darling, it's the ringmaster here. So good to see you. It is my distinct privilege and pleasure to welcome you all to the 10th anniversary season of the Queen Mary's Dark Harbor. Won't you join us?
And now it's my great pleasure to introduce to you a trio of very talented, twisted, but always inspirational creative individuals who for over a decade have brought you the one and only Queen Mary's Dark Harbor. Please join me in welcoming to the stage my friends, co-founders and producers of Epic Entertainment, Charity Hill and Steve Sheldon, and our fearless talent director, co-founder and chief creative officer of MyCo2, David Wally.
Thank you all for being here.
Okay, well, let's get started. Let's just start right into some of our conversation.
I think I'm the old man here, so I'll go first. I started with Dark Harbor back in 2010 when we followed an event that used to be run at the Queen Mary called Shipwreck that had run for many years. Some of you might have even worked it. And the year that I came in was 2010 when Dark Harbor was brought on board and branding a brand new event and creating new characters, new mazes, new monsters, and trying to bring some life back into the event. I had never done a Halloween before. I didn't go to Halloweens. I didn't like horror films. I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. But my friends who brought me in assured me that I would enjoy it. And in fact, I had the most fun I'd ever had in my life working that first year and really finding and helping to create a wonderful family atmosphere that has only grown over the years. And I really miss my family these last couple of years, so I can't wait for us to be able to get back to it.
Amen to that. I think I came next. I came along in 2011 as the director of entertainment and events at the Queen Mary, and Dark Harbor was, of course, our largest and, dare I say, best event. And so I got to jump into what was my first venture into Halloween and the haunt industry, and it was daunting and terrifying for many reasons, but also one of the most gratifying experiences I've ever had because I was immediately welcomed into the Dark Harbor family, and it was very much a time of transition and still, figuring out the rebranding and how that would work and new characters, new mazes, and all of that. But the constant, I think, is the family that is everyone behind Dark Harbor, and that is something that I miss as well.
And for me, I came into Dark Harbor in 2012, mid-season, and I just remember being blown away. I came on to work as the assistant director of entertainment events at the Queen Mary with Steve, and to come into that production while it's operating and know that I would at some point sit at the helm of it was so overwhelming. I just remember feeling like it already operated like a machine. It's like this fever pitch, and it's all the cast and the crew that make it what it is today, yesterday, tomorrow. And I just remember feeling grateful and proud and excited to be a part of it, and I still had no idea exactly what that was going to be or what it was going to look like at the time, but I definitely knew I really wanted to put my stake in it.
So let's talk about the collaboration between you three. I mean, that's a big part of any artistic endeavor. So how did you three come together and find common ground and share ideas? Tell us a little bit about your process as a trio.
I think, we make a fantastic team, which is we have a lot of fun together, which is what I think is at the core of what makes everything work at Dark Harbor. With Epic, Charity and I we're with Epic. We sit as the kind of umbrella that touches every aspect of the event, from the not so fun stuff, which is permitting and city guidelines and health department and all of that nitty gritty stuff that we spend all year planning, to the more fun stuff, which is the creative and the actual event operation. So we get to kind of have our hands in every little piece of it. And I think when it comes to what we find to be the most fun is the creative and then the actual activation of it. We have a great team that's very collaborative, that we just do what we think is fun. We have a lot of fun together. That's really the goal.
When do you guys start the process in the year?
We're typically planning next year while the current year is in operation. So we have meetings during actual Dark Harbor nights. Sometimes we'll pull each other aside and have a quick 30-minute meeting to say, hey, look at this over here. This is working great. This is something we should continue next year. Or hey, over here, this isn't working so great. Let's change it. Let's think about next year doing something a little bit different.
And Charity, how about you? How do you find collaborating with these two handsome fellows?
Easy. I think what I love about working at Dark Harbor is, I know a lot of people say it, but it feels like a family. And for us, our creative process might start with Steve and I, very quickly adding David, but we like to involve every single facet of the project. So we might pull in talent for brainstorms, we'll pull in costume, makeup, all the way to operations people and security, just to get different perspectives. And I think the idea of collaboration is something that we do really well. We listen, or at least try to listen, as much as we can to the feedback we get from the audience, as well as the people who are working with us from cast and crew. And I think the collaboration part is probably the most fun.
It is, and as you alluded to, it's not just the three of us. It's Adam and Steven and their team who've been with us forever, and Katie and Jeff and their departments who've been with us forever, the operations guys who've been there forever. And we have developed a shorthand and a trust with each other that allows us to be able to really, go to the wall, and push each other to the best. As Steve was alluding to earlier, I sometimes write voluminous emails of the things I really would like to see happen, and it's great that we're able to do that with each other and really sort of say, how are we going to keep making it better each year and not rest on our laurels, but try to do the best we can for our company of people and our audience.
And I think that's what we do together. We sit down every year and say, can we make it better than the previous year? And if not, then we need to take a good hard look at what we're doing. So we kind of enter into our own kind of personal verbal contracts that we're not in this unless we're going to make it better than the year prior. And I think that's really important when it comes to the body of work and the story and the whole event experience holistically. And I think that's what we just set out and strive to do while having, a kick-ass time doing it.
Well, it's definitely gained momentum over the years. Don't you think they've topped themselves year after year? With Haunts, it's not a linear story like a film or a movie. So sometimes stories sort of lost because there's so much more visual stuff happening and just the interaction with guests. What does story even mean in the haunt world, and especially in Dark Harbor, because the stories are pretty rich there?
The first couple of years, the event was brand new, and it was come in, the guys who mounted first year, one of whom I don't know if many of you knew him, Robert Koval was the producer the first year. He was a great and wonderful man, and he passed away suddenly a few weeks ago. It was a tremendous loss. I loved working with him very much. But he and another friend of mine, Tom Clough, had originally planned to be doing the event at the Orange County Fairgrounds, and they didn't end up getting their deal made with them. So they came over to the Queen Mary and said, we've got this idea, can we do it here? And the ownerships said yes. And so it was an idea that was created sort of from outside, the notion of it being a Queen Mary event. And for those of you who remember those early years, we had different face characters. We had Moondara in season 1, and I've got some photos coming up later. And then her sisters joined the crowd in season 2. And the team sort of got together after that second season and really decided what we needed to do to make this event really special at the Queen Mary was to take advantage of that incredible ship and its history. And so in 2012, we branded our first 5 characters, the Captain, Graceful Gale, Scary Mary, Half-Hatch Henry, and Samuel the Savage. And once we did that, I think we really felt like, oh, this is the right track. This is what Dark Harbor needs to be. And I think what we were surprised to find was it wasn't just that somebody thought up these characters and said, let's do it, and did a sketch. But then costumes had to invent who those characters were, and the makeup department had to determine what those characters looked like. And most importantly, we had to find the right human beings to inhabit them and bring them to life. And some of them, I think, clicked in instantaneously, and a couple of characters took, a year or two to find the real juice behind that character. And then in 2013, that's where I think the event really took off, because we decided we needed to not just like have rock bands on the stages. We wanted to do more entertainment. We wanted to have more fun. We needed a party. And the only way to do that was for the captain to summon, the king, queen, he, she, they of all parties, the ringmaster, to bring her circus to life. I think it was 12 that we brought in Dead Rise, and that sort of had a strong connection to the ship. And then 13, the circus came in. And I think those two dynamics of off the ship, of Dead Rise and the circus, and then starting our entertainment program, really brought the exterior of the ship to life. And we were able to take advantage of those great mazes that we've got on the ship as well to round ourselves out.
Where did you draw inspiration from?
Well, as David said, we really like to use historic assets and the history of the ship. And I feel like we find our little bit of magic in that gray area, where we blur the lines from history and historic to a little bit of fantasy. And I think in there is a sweet spot for us. So organically, it's doing a lot of research. Steve and I will find ourselves in Scotland, for instance, a couple of years ago, because that was where the ship was built, and kind of tracing back its history, and that was when we burst the maze Intrepid. So I think it's about travel, trying to take things from reality and really focusing on historic aspects. I think people gravitate toward that. They like a little bit of reality with their hysteria.
Something that sets the Queen Mary in particular aside from anyone else is her history. She's a living, breathing entity, and her stories are living and breathing. There's so much content there. We've barely scratched the surface, even now, this many years later. And so to not take advantage of that story almost felt like a betrayal to the Queen. Because there's so much there, and it's so great to be able to bring some of those stories to life.
Tell us a little bit about your storyboard process. Once you landed on like the Iron Master or the Ringmaster or any of the masters, what was your process there? Did you start with images, or?
Why don't we throw the keynote up and we can sort of talk through it and talk through some of the images in it as we go.
Great.
So this is going back, for those of you who might remember, from left to right, that was Gundara, the wonderful horned character that was played most nights by Jennifer Hills, wonderfully. And then in season 2, we had her two sisters, Matanut, who was all about the sea, and Seer, who was all about fire. And those two characters back then related to, what do we call it the first couple of years? Submerged and Hellfire. And in addition to those main characters, the Sliders had a definite look way back then, very much sort of Son of Anarchy type of aesthetic. And we had these wonderful actors who inhabited our street characters and our maze monsters, and we had a makeup department that was just out of this world. And then this is what I was talking about in 2012. These were the first 5 characters, and it started with this sketch that J.J. James now, our production designer, came up with. And that led us to figuring out who we wanted to play those characters. Gundara, Jennifer Hills, we immediately cast as Graceful Gale. And little known fact, Peggy, those characters started in the maze the first year, and Peggy was the other Graceful Gale back in 2012. And Brad there is the captain.
She was a silent character.
Yeah.
Which I liked.
Exactly, that changed the next year. And then that was the next year when we brought the ringmaster in and really started to. I've always loved this photograph. It was one of the great ones we did down in the boiler room. And so this is sort of where we have this first character. So if you want to sort of talk about them and where we came up with them a little bit.
Yeah, where did you draw your inspiration for these backstories, for some of these people who weren't historical, and then conversely, the historical ones, what sort of, exceptions did you make, or how did you approach their character story?
I think these initial characters, aside from the ringmaster, these initial characters all came from combing through the archives of the ship. 6 floors below deck at the Queen Mary, there's an archive section that few people are fortunate enough to ever go to. But it holds just a wealth of information and backstory and information about the ship that includes reported sightings. And so we went through kind of the most reported paranormal sightings aboard the ship and what they all pointed back to. And we came up with characters inspired by those sightings that were reported the most.
The Lady in White was one of the most, right?
She is the inspiration for Graceful Gale. Half-Hatch Henry is inspired by John Pedler, who really was cut in half by Door 13. We went back to those real stories, and these characters are inspired by them.
And then I remember in B340, maids wouldn't go in there, people wouldn't want to they wanted to try to make office spaces there at one time, and everyone refused, and so it just sits there cold and empty.
Now it's been renovated. The B340 room has been renovated. When the ship reopens, you can actually stay there.
People want to stay there.
Not a fucking chance.
We do have crew every year who start with us who are new, who end up either leaving early, refusing to work in certain areas of the ship. I think a lot of people don't believe all of the hype until they're in it, and then they get a dose.
I'll never forget the first time Wally called me during the show to let me know that one of the actors had quit because they were terrified and didn't like their position. They were terrified, said they had had a paranormal experience. And I said, wait a minute, they took a job at a haunted event, on a haunted ship, and now they're scared because it's haunted? I don't get it.
I think the scariest time I had, we were doing a photo shoot down in the pool, which is one of the most alive paranormal areas. And you guys had me like backing up into those quarters, which are the old dressing rooms where people have seen apparitions. And I did feel very cold there, and it was very, very creepy. Physically being in the pool was quite creepy. Okay, over the years, Dark Harbor's become known for its recognizable characters. And how have you been able to grow these characters to have such a strong following?
Well,
Great talent.
But
It's a great talent.
yeah, I think it really is. I mean, the talent that we have is amazing. Everybody is so committed to the work that they do, and we talked earlier about the trust that we have amongst ourselves, and I have to have that with the people that work with me. It's really important that the people that work with us know what the expectations are and know what the purpose is of the position they're doing to bring our guests a good time. And it can be challenging, because oftentimes our guests can be a little bit unruly, particularly after they've went and visited one of those well-stocked bars. But everybody really does a great job and really rises to the occasion, particularly our main characters and our maze monsters and everybody really. These are a few of the other main characters that we brought in subsequent years. Burdetta Jackson, our incredible voodoo priestess that brought fire. The Iron Master, who came from that trip to Scotland that Stephen Charity took. And Chef, who's also based on an actual character from the ship he was a chef, correct me if I'm wrong, whose crew basically got tired of him and pushed him in the oven, and he got burned over 90% of his body.
Oh my God.
Fun times.
I think just something important to know too, the reason that characters are able to develop and the reason that the talent has such a devotion to the event is really because they have that trust with David. David is such an advocate for all of the talent, all of the actors, and making sure that they have what they need to do what they do, making sure that everyone, that Cherry and I especially have an understanding of exactly what they need and what they're facing, and really bringing, if there is a plight, bringing that to life with us so that we can do whatever we need to do to address it, because sometimes people do get unruly and sometimes, positions are more difficult, in reality than what we've imagined. And David is fantastic at advocating on behalf of the talent, and they trust him because of that. And I think that's a huge reason why, talent stays for the long term and they grow year over year.
And I think also, coming from the production side, when we're looking at these large budgets and doling out monies to different departments and sections, one of the first departments we sit down with is talent, because David usually comes in with a great long list of requirements and demands, and we do feel like it's very important to hit as many as we can, as many as possible. And I think that to start talent first is a really important thing in our process. The other thing I wanted to say about turning our characters iconic, while it's the talent, it's the costume, it's the makeup, it's the direction, it's also a team that we rarely discuss, which is great marketing, good social stories, driving a lot of our, if you come to our event, you have the option of buying into the story as much or as little as you want to. We want to design and create, your scare experience for the nuance follower who's been with us for a decade, all the way to the person who's arriving for the first time and just wants to be frightened, or maybe not frightened at all and just wants to go on a little spooky pub crawl with us. With that comes a story that we have to drive in more places than just in the event footprint. So I think it's really cool also to be able to drag that out through social media and other media. So we've got a small but mighty marketing team that works around the clock with us as well.
Yeah, I want to back up a couple of slides because there was this great story that happened in like the 4th or 5th year, I think. And the young woman on the bottom in the middle, Danielle Kaufman, played this incredible, just ferocious character. She would like go backstage and she'd make herself a bowl of oatmeal and stuff it in her mouth and just be vomiting all over everybody throughout the event. She was a really, really special character. And like in 2014 or 2015, this Japanese man from Japan walked up to me and somebody pointed him over to me, and he walked over to me, and he was showing me his phone. He couldn't speak very good English, but he was showing me a picture of Danielle. He wanted to see her, and I had to tell him that she wasn't working the event that year, and he was so crestfallen that it really made me understand, speaking of marketing and the work that the people do, like how much these characters belong not just to us and the people who play them, but our audience as well. Just wanted to go through a couple of other photos here of like our amazing stage performers. The fire performers are just amazing. Our sliders are incredible.
David, how many of the...
One of the things I love about the sliders too is for years I was talking to the guys about, we need a woman, we need to bring a woman onto the team. And we finally found somebody who wanted to do it. And she was amazing. She was with us for a year or two. But then in the last couple of years that we ran the event, we had multiple women on the show, and they were ferocious and great, and so good. We love the diversity of our cast.
How many of the stories are written, and how many are created by the actors just who are out on the street or in the mazes?
I think that we, in the early days, as you well remember, we did a stage show for 1 or 2 years for those main characters. And we really had origin stories with them that, the actors took and play with. And one of the other things that happens is in trying to make something new every year is we oftentimes change up, the mazes. There was a year where Graceful Gale was in Submerged, and then she went over to Soulmate, and then Soulmate went away, and Half-Hatch Henry's bounced around a couple of mazes. So we've allowed their stories to evolve a little bit, and also, again, trust-wise, allowing the actors to perform them. I have to bring in backups to fill different positions every night, which is super duper fun for them. But part of the gig is that we also have to get them to understand what the purpose is tonight in this maze, in this position, that might be different from where they were in a previous night. So there's a lot of homework that goes into not just getting the event open at the end of September, but each and every night making sure that we're putting on a great show for the people that are coming that night, because they don't really care what it was night 1, they want to know what it's like night 15. I'm there to support everybody. I picked these 4 characters here because these are for, wonderful actors who came up with these incredibly iconic characters that our audiences love, that had nothing to do with me other than casting them and getting out of their way and costumes way and makeup's way and let them play and make incredible creations. This is some of our circus team over the year. Brilliant. Different great iconic characters from Dark Harbor that you guys I'm sure all remember. Dead Rye is one of my favorite mazes of all time. So Alive, and those guys created this energy at the end of the maze, like it was worth the price of admission for not only the people going through the maze, but people would hang around at the end just to see all these people get terrified as they exit the maze. I loved it. And again, those stage performers that we started out with, and I think the first couple of years we started, we had like a magician and a sideshow performer. And when Steve and Charity really came into their own, Charity in particular, really was pushing me to let's find more entertainment and let's get the entertainment not just on the stages but off the stages. And once that happened and we allocated the budget to really, grow that program, we got into aerial, we got into clowning, we got into marionettes and musicians and found performers who had been with us as monsters for years that ended up being terrific at these different things. So it just really helped to grow the event and make it that party atmosphere.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it too is, just from years of being a guest at a Halloween haunt, as you guys know, you spend the majority of your time in a queue line. So how can we fix that, or how can we entertain you while in the queue line? And that became, that's the answer we were striving for a good couple of years at the beginning, from 12 to I'd say 15. We were really looking and pushing the envelope. At one point we had bars in every queue, we had stages in every queue, mini stages, even immersed in the mazes themselves. Because once you spend 2 hours in line, you might want to stay in that world immersed for more than the couple minutes you get to when you're just, trailing through the maze itself. And we found that there was, a lot of appetite for that as well, to say, I want to stay in Dead Rise longer. I want to stay, in Lullaby and feel immersed in that longer. And so we kind of dove into that kind of entertainment as well. But I think that just kind of goes back to what we were saying, which also gives you opportunity to hobnob and rub elbows with some of our main characters inside those bars and experiences. But I think that just goes back to what we talked about earlier of just trying to make sure that every year we're pushing the envelope, doing something, different and a little more unique. And I think that's what drives us.
And for me, getting to getting to live in a character for 6 years, just what a joy that was, and what a luxury, because you really get to know that character and you're always thinking of new things, and it just takes on such a new life. But also just the relationships that you create with the other characters grew so much. And back to some of the little just pop-up stage shows, a lot of those just came about organically. Often I would be walking the street and I'd start with the voodoo team or join the fire show, or well, the ringmaster could join any show. But just to see all those little, like little Lotsies, the little Italian little bits pop up everywhere. It was just such a joy. Twirly and Mud and all these great characters that took on lives of their own.
And nothing made me happier to see all of those incredible things happening that I had absolutely nothing to do with, but that you guys knew you had the license to do it, and that you were making the stuff happen without being told to.
We felt trust and we felt comfort, and we felt in a very safe space in which to create, and that was important too. Even though it was a scary space, it was safe.
The bottom left picture is one of my favorites for a couple of reasons. One, I was about 50 pounds lighter then, but I'm working on my way back. It's gonna happen. This is my year. Really brought it to life in ways that none of us could have possibly imagined that character would be. And, you know, she over the years had a couple of, you know, understudies that had to be ready to go on because sometimes people have to miss a show and stuff like that. But it wasn't until a couple of years in that we had another performer who started playing the ringmaster that she and Peggy became very close friends with. And when Peggy got to a point where it's like, yeah, I want to do it, but I don't necessarily want to do the entire season, that the two of them became to share the role, you know. And the thing that was interesting is, I think people's inclinations those early years was, why can't the people who were playing the ringmaster when Peggy's not here be more like Peggy? And the reality is nobody can be like Peggy.
As the ringmaster would say, you might as well stop applauding, for it will never be enough.
But the reality is, only Peggy could play that character the way Peggy played it, because that was her interpretation and run at it. And the other gentleman who played the character, Andrew Diego here, who's just a wonderful performer, had much more of a sort of like a darker, more cabaret, master of ceremonies take on the character that was his, you know. And so you just had to trust that and let the actors be the best version of the character that they could be when they were playing them.
One thing I will say, with all the main characters, you know, every year we sit down as a team, a collaborative group, and we go, okay, where is this character going this year? What are we, you know, how is the story evolving? What are we doing? The ringmaster is the one character that we never sit down and talk about where the story is going, because where's the ringmaster going this year? Like, we don't know.
Stay tuned.
Very organic.
I had one last slide I just want to go to really quickly, because all of these great photographers have, over the years, done incredible work at Dark Harbor, capturing our event. And Griff Shavaria and Albert Lamb and Jonathan Lewis, Graham Palmer, and Michael Wada, thank you very much for letting us.
So let's move into, I know for me, I didn't really realize the whole character. I was thrilled when I got it, but I didn't really realize the whole character until I had the costume on and the makeup. And I especially didn't find the voice until I saw the makeup sketch with her ravaged throat. Because when I started working on her, I was way up here and very presentational. And then when I saw that gash, I thought, oh, she's got severed vocal cords. So it brought the voice down lower and into my belly more. And I think that helped me sustain the character. And I rarely had vocal trouble during the run, which many people did, because I was coming from a lower place, which was comfortable. Let's talk about some of the character development and through costuming, through makeup, what that process is like. Charity, you want to field that one?
Sure. You know, first of all, we have a costume and makeup two separate teams, and they're incredible. I feel like we can go to them with our crazy ideas, and they whip out magic. You know, our makeup team consists of anywhere between 25 and 30 makeup artists every season, and they're a machine. But even before we get to the machine, which every night I marvel at, how we get that many people through makeup and onto the stage in such a short period of time, especially because we don't use masks for the most part. Almost all of it is airbrush, almost all of it is, you know, hand-done prosthetics, often molded and casted by Jeff and his team personally. So they just do incredible work. And then the same thing with costume. We get to sit down with Katie, and Katie will say, no, Charity, no, it will not cost that. But she can really take a character and whatever we put down on paper, whatever our drawing is of the character, and she makes it not only come to life, she makes it affordable, she makes it something she can replicate 1,000,000 times, and she makes it comfortable enough for our actor to be able to bring it to life comfortably every night as well.
And she too, not just our team has to get the backups or the all-stars ready to go, but her department has to take, you know, whatever we throw at her. And I'm usually pretty good at it, but there's usually like at least a couple of times a season, she'll just walk out with the character and the person I've cast that night, you know, who's like 2 sizes too small or too big for the costume and just look at me and is like, what are you doing? You're killing me, you know? And the makeup team is like every night they don't know what's coming at them, you know. There's established relationships with a few characters and a few artists, but for the most part it's like, you know, they're in a line and I'm pointing them to a different artist, and sometimes the artists are talking to me about, you know, I don't want to do another Scary Mary for a couple of hours, you know, can I get somebody else or something like that, you know. And it really helps them as artists to grow as well. And every character leaving the room every night is just truly a work of art.
Yeah.
So I'm just dazzled by it.
I think our average is 12 minutes per
That's great.
character. An average of 12 minutes per character, which is, considering it's, you know, it's all airbrushing, is phenomenal. It's crazy.
Sometimes they can get done even faster than that, like when you have like high-speed video that can walk people through it. Do you guys have a video back there that you can show about sort of our makeup process? That's our captain.
Being worked on by Renee.
It's Daniel Kaufman again. One of our Dead Rise characters. Josh. Squeaks. Scary Mary.
Sammy the Savage.
Michael Lundstrom. Grayson Gale.
I started with the lovely
And Matt
mask.
Henry in the back.
That was a very moisturizing mask.
Jen Vergozo, they're doing the makeup, who's just blown up and become a huge makeup artist up in Hollywood. Amazing.
But how does that change versus, you know, an IP versus an original story?
What's very different with what we do is we're dealing with original content. So we really, you know, the approval process is us looking at each other and saying, you good? Yeah, good. When you're doing an IP that is already established, that's already branded, characters that already belong to the audience, you have to be, as we say, on IP, on brand. So it's very, very important that you, in the casting process, are casting people who are going to look very, very similar to those characters. Sometimes they're, for a Halloween Haunt, we did a Halloween Haunt a couple of years ago with another company that there were a lot of on IP characters. And, you know, one of the producers for that, like, really wanted people to look exactly like the people in the movie. And I was like, we're in Hollywood and this is a seasonal event and you're paying $14 an hour. You're just not going to get that every single night. So you're going to need to trust me and let me come close to that. And then for characters that really had to, some of the characters were masked in a heavy prosthetic so that no matter who was there, they would look very, very similar to it. But just as we have established trust with ourselves, you have to establish trust with the IP holder and let them know that you understand that you're being given the privilege of working with their IP and that you're going to be a trustworthy guardian of that and that you're going to be open to whatever input they have and making the change they need to do. I'm working on a project right now that we had a lock script Friday night and then we had a work session and I wrote all day yesterday to make the changes that will hopefully get us back to having a locked script. But that's the nature of the business.
That's the showbiz, David. There it is.
Okay, once the stories are developed and the mazes have to be fabricated and then brought to reality, what are some of the challenges you face when producing a Halloween attraction, especially on our queen, the historic vessel, and with all of her isms and things? How about
Yes.
Steve, you want to take that?
She is persnickety, the queen. So we work really closely with the Historic Resources Advisor at the ship to make sure that everything that we're doing is approved and within the parameters that we've been given. It's, you know, 3 mazes on the ship in historic areas that were for sure never built with the intention of having thousands of guests walk through them. It is challenging. On top of that, because of the historic nature, we can't touch or change anything that is attached to the ship. So even, you know, the walls that you see are false walls that we've built for the most part in front of the actual walls. If there's anything that we need to paint or we need to change, that's something that we've brought in. And so literally every change that we make, we have to get sign off from the Historic Resources Advisor and make sure that it's not changing anything with ingress or egress, making sure that the fire sprinklers are still in the correct places to be able to get proper coverage, and if we're building false walls. So there's a lot that goes into it to make sure that we're checking all of the boxes, and most importantly, preserving, doing our part to preserve the ship and making sure that when we pack up at the end of the season, that we're leaving her in at least as good a shape as we found her when we started building, in March. We really only have, in a typical year, 3 or 4 months off, but we try to leave her in as good a shape or better shape than when we left in November.
Design in such a way to bring the ship to life and also to know and have respect for the ship and what can be done. And Adam Conger and Stephen Taylor and David Boykins and all those guys who work just so tirelessly for months and are good stewards of the ship as well. The ship is in good hands with our team.
Once you have worked at the Queen, despite her quirks and despite any frustrations, I think you almost immediately develop a love for the ship.
Yes, I love the old floozy.
Yes, I think we all do.
Well,
One team, one dream.
Yeah, and I think that's part of what what we're tasked to do is to tell her story in a more meaningful way, to introduce the asset, the ship herself, to a new generation year after year. I think that's part of the reason that we're there, She has such a rich old history, and we're not too far off from anyone who boarded that ship soon will no longer be here to tell those stories. So I think we feel an obligation to carry on her story and also keep her at the forefront of everyone's minds, because there is some really rich history there. The history we play with, as well as the historic true value of the ship herself.
And all of our competitors, and friendly competitors out there have great teams that work on their events, and they have great cast, and they have people, they have wonderful mazes, they have all these things that they do great in different ways. But the one thing that we have that's just so important for us is we always have that beautiful ship as our backdrop, that really sets the tone and placemaking that we're so privileged to be able to work with.
Yeah.
So if you see a petition to save the Queen, please sign it. Well, I think we have a few more minutes. Would you be willing to field some questions from our fans?
Absolutely.
Can we turn the house lights up a little bit and take a couple of questions?
So obviously the Queen Mary's kind of in limbo. Nobody really knows when she's going to be reopening. Do you guys already have plans for the future, for future Dark Harbor events, for whenever she does reopen?
We've never stopped planning, so that's the good news. Obviously, as you alluded to, there's a lot going on at the Queen, and I wish we were here making an announcement that, surprise, we're reopening Dark Harbor this year. That isn't the case for this year, but we are, I will tell you, we're already making plans for next year in the hopes that we will be back in 2022. So stay tuned.
Okay, someone else? How about right here in the front row?
Hello, yes. And this is less about the event and more about what you guys do here on the stage, because one of my favorite things about your guys' panels are the fact that we have time with these characters that aren't for the opening and things like that. So we get time with the captain, the ringmaster, and everybody. It really feels like those characters kind of are let loose, and you guys really don't have any say in what they're gonna do. In terms of the creative side of creating a show like this for an audience of fans, is it a situation of, here's a script, guys, and it's really well written, or is it, we need to get A to Z, figure out how to do it, and the characters kind of are allowed to kind of take it where they want to take it?
It's a little bit of both, honestly. You know, we are all close enough friends and colleagues that we can sit down and have a quick brainstorm, and we often finish each other's sentences, so that's, it's pretty easy to sit up here with everyone you see panel-wise. When it comes to talent, though, it's, well, we can give Peggy the bones and give her a script, also knowing that she's going to make it her own.
Well, and especially Brad.
And Brad.
I stick to script more than Brad. Just for the record.
Fucking Brad.
There is no script with Brad.
Yeah, but I think a lot of it also comes organically. You know, we've tested over the years more scripted panels and then less scripted panels and off the cuff. And for us, at least for the team that usually sits up here, we prefer to have a conversation with you guys instead of talk at you. So we try to be as unscripted as possible.
Well, I have a few thank yous, everyone. We'd love to thank the Midsummer Scream team, the fantastic David Markland, my lovely boyfriend, Mr. Rick West, don't be jealous, Steve, Claire Dunlap, and Gary Morat. Thank you for creating such a wonderful playground and event. And I'd like to thank the panel sponsor, TEA at USC. And let's give a big round of applause for Steve Sheldon, Karen Hill, and David Wally. Happy haunting this year. Stay safe and do something every day that scares you.